Hey guys, Richard Holder here. Hopefully we'll stay online. Unlike last night, I got booted off, lost my connection. But hey, it's technology. Sometimes that happens. So tonight I want to talk about a few different things. See, Psych is already in the house. What's up? I want to talk about two things. We're going to talk about the video that I just posted, which is 6.2-liter performance. And the reason that I did that, and we'll go over a lot more stuff later on, but the reason I did that is because I did a video on 6-liter performance, different things that we did with cylinder heads and camshafts and intake manifolds and various things to upgrade your 6-liter. And I got a lot of comments on about it. People were requesting, hey, can you do that on the 6.2-liter stuff? So I thought, I've got a lot of testing done on L92 and LS3 stuff because I was lucky enough that I got a really good deal on a GM LS3 crate motor back in the day. And so I was able to do a ton of testing with it. We even ran boost on it. And I remember doing a cam upgrade on that thing on the LS3 and then adding a single turbo, the single precision turbo. And with 7 pounds of boost, that thing made 825. So a cam and an LS3 crate motor and a turbo can make a lot of power. So you've got to welcome everybody and make sure that you hydrate. And I'm hydrating properly. It's Friday night, Is a counterweighted LS crank good? I'm not doing Q&A yet, but that's interesting. And yes, they are. But what I want to talk about first are conspiracy theories. And no, not like aliens or Bigfoot or the TikTok UFO, but although how awesome would it be if I had information on that? That would be super cool. I want to talk about two different kinds of conspiracy theories. One is that all of the manufacturers, Cams and Holly and all these people, and even the magazines are in on it too, that all that they do is print lies to people and tell them when they do testing that all they do is it's all controlled by advertising. Before we get to that, I want to talk about another conspiracy theory that was brought to my attention. I didn't even realize it until this person talked to me about it. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard about it. Let me know. You guys can chime in here. But somebody had, I think that they reached out through a text or an email or something, and they were asking me if they were saying that there's a big group of people out there that want to know the real truth about whether or not the LS engineers stole the design for the LS motor from Ford. And they wanted to know if I had any inside information into this, I guess, because apparently they think that I'm a lot more important in this industry than I actually really am. What they don't realize is that I'm so far removed from anybody that's cool that it's ridiculous. But that being said, first of all, I had no idea that was actually a thing. So I picture guys with tinfoil hats sitting around hashing out whether or not. See, the thing that I can't even come to grips with is I don't even understand why that's a thing. like I don't know why people would be arguing about that GM stole the design for the LS from the Ford people. I don't know why that's a real thing, or why I guess it goes back to that the Cleveland guys stole the design from the big block Chevy head or whatever. First of all, I can tell you that obviously I have no knowledge of this because this is all kind of cool, like inside information. I'm not close enough to the heartbeat of wherever this information would come from if that was the case, because I'm like the Kathy Griffin. I'm a D-list automotive person. I'm not on staff anywhere anymore. Even when I was, it was with McMullen. It was with a very small company. So I'm not part of like the Hot Rod Network or Motor Trend TV or any of that stuff. So I'm basically the redheaded stepchild of the automotive kingdom. So nobody would, if that was really something and somebody actually had an answer to that, or if it was important, nobody would tell me anything. But the interesting thing is that when I was having this conversation with somebody, I was trying to figure out why somebody cared about that, like why that was a real thing, why it was important that, and why there wouldn't be some sort of logical discussion about that. If something like, first of all, I don't know why that's important anyway. The second thing is, if there was transfer from design from one manufacturer to another, from Ford to Chevy or from Chevy to Ford, that wouldn't be uncommon that one engineer would work at one place and then leave his job and go to another place. And then he would bring the information with him and his ideas about what an engine should be or what a cylinder head should be or an intake manifold or whatever top secret things that they're talking about that make those two the same thing. I don't even really understand. I also don't understand, again, why it's important. If the two share bore centers or cylinder head design or whatever it is, I would think that would be fairly common because there's only certain number of ways that you can make things work. Okay, it's got to get from here to here, and it's got to do this and this and this. And once you whittle down all of the things that you have to accomplish with the motor, there's only so many ways that you can do it, and the engine's going to look kind of like the engine does. But the interesting thing for me is that when I was explaining this logic to him, I could tell that he was now thinking that I was part of the, of the people. I was part of the top secret people that were keeping it from him, the information that he wanted to go out and explain to the world and to the internet that there is a conspiracy. That I don't know if he meant that the Ford guys should take like credit for the popularity of the LS. Again, I don't understand all of it, but I just thought it was interesting that he was so convinced that something was happening that even when in the light of accurate information, and I wanted to help him, that he still was convinced that that's the way that it was. And not only that, that now I was actually part of this like conspiracy. So I thought it was kind of cool. I don't know if you guys have heard any of that. The Ford and LS link. But the other thing is the other conspiracy theory that I think is really interesting that I get a lot, because all I've done my whole life basically is testing, and I get this comment from time to time, and I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about it, because here's the thing. So if I were to do a test, which I do all the time, and I compare this A camshaft to a B camshaft, and the B camshaft wins, what happens is all the people that have the A camshaft get mad. And they say, oh, you're just on the take for whoever happens to own the B camshaft. The first thing is, and I believe me, I've gone through this several times with manufacturers and who have tried to get me fired because they didn't like what I said about their product when I did a back-to-back test. And I told them, look, here's the data. If you want to duplicate it, we can duplicate it. I know that it's accurate because I know how to test. But anyway, the people are saying that, hey, you're in the people that have the B cam are paying you. I'm like, well, first of all, if you saw what kind of car I drive and where I sleep and stuff when I go down to West Tech, you'd know that nobody's paying me anything. But the other thing is, I have no vested interest in anything that's tested. I don't sell anything. I don't have a shop. I don't make anything or sell stuff. So if I test something, I could care less what they do. One's an A, one's a B. When I test them, here's what A did and here's what B did. That's all the information that I can give you. And my question isn't even so much that, because I'm not too concerned about that. My question is there some of that going on the internet? Like, for instance, let me give you an example. If Holly or Comp Cams or Brian Tooley Racing, Texas Speed, Guatney Performers, whoever, if anybody else does what they say is a direct back-to-back test and their part comes out on the winning side, would you trust that information from them? Because would you think that a manufacturer would go out of their way to purposely deceive the customers into buying their product? Like, would they say that their product is better than it actually is? Could you say in the world of today, could you say that, hey, this high ram makes more power than a fast intake manifold everywhere? I mean, is such a thing even possible anymore, given our level of our ability to test, and not only to test, but to disseminate that information? That's the thing with the internet. I think it brought a whole new level. Back in the day when I first started with automotive magazines, people would do ads in the magazines and say all kinds of stuff. Oh, this exhaust system adds 20 horsepower. And I remember talking to the editor at the time. I'm like, how do we know that that's even true? I mean, we've never tested it. And on my first day, that's what I wanted to start doing, was testing things and verifying this stuff. Like, how do we know that it adds that much power? How do we know where it adds that much power? If it does add 20, where is it? Is it at the top? Is it at the bottom? Is it legal? There's lots of other questions. So my question is, and because here's the flip side to that. If we say that these guys would make up stuff about their intake that they make and that they sell and they're trying to get you to buy, if they say nice things about it, that can enhance the sale process. But the other question is, the flip side of that is, a lot of these guys, and I know them personally in a lot of cases, a lot of these guys do a lot of research and development. So they will, for instance, if they're designing a camshaft, they will test a camshaft and put it in and compare it to the stock cam or even a competitor's cam and try to make more power with it. If it doesn't, they'll take it back and redesign it and keep going until they are able to make the power. And then once they design something that makes more power than the other guy's stuff does, they obviously want to tell people about that. They want to say, hey, look, we've done all this research and development and spent the last 6 months testing 15 different cam designs, and now we want to show you what we've done. So my question again is that just like fake promotion and conspiracy, and it's all, it's just the advertisers controlling everything, or is that research and development? So let me know what you guys think. Personally, I think, I think maybe just like with everything, and there's maybe a bit of both. I know back in the day, advertisers used to make up claims, and you see that all the way back hundreds of years in advertising, back when they used to sell, opium and cocaine and all kinds of stuff in as one of the ingredients and stuff. So, obviously there's a history of that. But given the level of communication and the level of testing that we have now, I just don't know that it's possible anymore. Because if you actually built a product and told people how great it was, and it wasn't great, I have an advertising degree, so one of the rules in advertising is nothing kills a bad product quicker than good advertising. So if you tell everybody about it and everybody tries it and it's terrible, then they'll tell everybody and then nobody will buy it. And that's something that's exaggerated exponentially with the introduction of the internet, because now we can tell everybody about it and very, very quickly it spreads. So let me know what you guys think. And I thought that was kind of cool stuff, all the kind of conspiracy theories. But now we can get to our our question and answer stuff. If you guys got question and answers, I need to go back over these comments because I wasn't even watching them yet because I wasn't at my Q&A session yet. Let's get over to government. Newsom cut the feed yesterday. I don't know that he has that much control over me. Off-road mud mowers. The Triton engines and LS engines and main bearing caps are super similar in design. See, there's even more conspiracy. It's aluminum foil hats. We quit using tin. Okay, good. That's good. Aluminum is a lot lighter, so it's easier on the neck, I think. Paul says because Ford guys want to accept LS swap Fox bodies, and this would help. Yeah. I have a Fox Mustang, and I would really love to have an all aluminum LS in it. It would be super awesome. GM is part of the Illuminati. ZE German. What else we got going on? More high compression. Hayden Storm. More high compression E85 builds. Mostly when I use E85, I don't do NA motors. I do E85 on boosted motors, and it works really well. And the reason I use E85 on the turbo motors and stuff is just because it's so inexpensive. I mean, before we were using a lot of race gas, and that's really expensive, especially when you're burning through stuff and doing dyno testing. If you're doing a lot of runs, obviously, and especially if you're doing them at a high turbocharged power level, you go through a lot of fuel. So if that fuel is $10 or $15 a gallon, it gets pretty expensive. And then if it's $2 or $2.50 a gallon for E85, it's much better. And I just have to go over to the local fuel station and get the E85. So it's a much better deal. That's why I use it. But I haven't seen it have good power gains on NA stuff, except for Coyote seems to work really well with it. Tim said, I think you give a lot more entertainment and information than some of the shows on Motor Trend. Thank you very much. I do like the stuff that they do. I like the testing on Engine Masters because I like Dulcich and Freiberger and especially Brule. I've been doing stuff with him for more than 20 years now. So, they're good guys and they do cool stuff. But where do you think they get all their good ideas? From this guy. Brent wants to know when the 3.8 is coming. It's coming. I just we need the holiday to get over with so I can get back down there and do some stuff. I just want to get it running so as soon as I get it running, then I get really excited because it always seems like it's hard to actually get it working. And once I can get it running and start testing, then swapping all the parts, that's not hard at all. How about boost on a 6.2 DI motor? S done. I'm going to do boost on a L83 5.3 liter motor because I have one and it's mine, and I'm not worried really about breaking it. But I need to work with somebody that's actually done that. I've never done anything on the DI stuff. Well, I mean, I've done the L83, the NA one, but I've never changed out the injectors or the pump or the cam lobes to get more fuel. So I need to talk with somebody who's done that and find out how much power we can make, what kind of mods I need to make on the fuel system so that we can run boost. And then it's just like anything else. I mean, I think if we just add fuel. The other thing I'm thinking about doing, and let me know what you guys think, as I'm thinking about just converting the L83 to port injection. The DI stuff is nice, but in my opinion, the DI stuff is less for power than it is for emissions and and drivability, fuel mileage and stuff. Dulcich and Holder need a show. Thanks, ProCharge Mopar. Dulcich really is the Mopar guy. I mean, that guy's forgotten more things than I'll ever know about Mopars, that's for sure. And I like Dulcich because he's one of the few guys that are like real guys that actually like get dirty and make stuff happen. And I really like that. There's a lot of guys that I know that are, especially back in the magazine days, they were editors and stuff. And, you know, I like them and I would hang out with them. They just weren't real car guys. They didn't know how to build an engine. They don't know what cam timing was. They don't know what boost was. They don't know any of that stuff. Hey, Tony, man, you just summed up the whole internet. Yeah, I do like conspiracy theories. I watch a lot of Joe Rogan stuff, and I love that he goes down the rabbit hole with the you know, all of the alien stuff and the internet and the Element 115 and all. That's just really cool stuff. It's easy to watch because it's entertaining, and maybe I don't know how you guys are, but I really hope that there is stuff like that. I hope that there is Bigfoot in the Loch Ness Monster, and I hope that there's aliens. I hope that all of that stuff is true. But the other side of me, because I test for a living, I want to see it. I mean, I want to see it and know that it's actually true. I want to believe, but I also want the proof. Let me rephrase. Does my cammed LS idling 850 RPM at 95 kPa sound like a vacuum leak? 95 kPa is a whole lot for an idle vacuum. That's essentially wide open throttle. Graham says the TA performance cylinder heads, I'm sure he's talking about for a Buick, are dyno proven to make more power than the Edelbrock. Yeah, Freiberger's deal, they certainly did. Anthony wants to know, is the Novi 1000 a good supercharger for a 347? Yeah, it works. It works good. It's I think a Novi 1000 is kind of going to be like an S trim level, if I remember right. I don't think that, maybe that was the 1200. A 1000, I mean, I used an A trim back in the day, and then we converted. I thought it was a big deal when we converted it to a B trim. Yeah, we got all the way up to a B trim that made lots of power. But I know that we could do, even on the B trim, we did 650 or more on the B trim. So a Novi 1000 would be enough to make a good power on a 347. Kyle says the Hemi is the logical development of a 2-valve cylinder head. The Canavalve Cleveland gets in the ballpark. The raised port, slightly Canavalve 2014 LT generation is getting closer. I would disagree with you on the Hemi thing. I think that that's not a good combination for a 2-valve, especially not for emissions. And for Morable, I really don't understand how cam duration and compression and timing can affect fuel or air fuel ratio. Please do an episode on that. Let's see what we got going down here. Your fingers are tipsy. Well, I've got to do a cheers to that then, obviously. Mondi88 wants to know when I'm going to do some Barra stuff. Probably not going to do that. I got about 15 motors that are much higher on the list than a Barra. There's lots of guys out there doing Barra. That for me, a Barra motor is awesome. I think that they've shown what they can do. I mean, somebody said last night that there's a guy running 50 pounds on one of them, making 2,500 horsepower. I haven't seen it, but I would think that that's kind of a doable thing. Any thoughts on the new 4.3 liter LT style DI engines? I'm sure you're talking about the V6, and yeah, that's cool. If you take a look at the factory power output compared to the previous 4.3 stuff, the V8s like the L99 that I have, and then obviously the 4.3 liter V6 and any of the earlier 4.3 liter V8s that Chevy offered, that's a lot more power than any of those are making. So it's pretty impressive. Center weighted LS cranks. Why do you keep going to asking about that? They all work. A center weighted LS crank probably is a good idea because that's usually where the flex is in the crank. And maybe that helps, I don't know, second or third order vibrations or something. I know that when we do bearing clearances for an LS on a high horsepower application, we usually have a little bit more bearing clearance in the center bearing. And then that comes courtesy of Brian Tooley because he knows a lot and has run lots of real high power stuff. So that's because that's when you look at the middle of the crank, obviously wants to move around. What is the status and timeline to continue the 455? So you want me to put me on a schedule now? The 455 Buick testing is coming up. Like I said, I just need to get down there. I've got heads for it. I got cams. I got intake manifolds. I got all kinds of stuff. I just need to get down there and do the testing. Have you ever tested an old Torker? Mark wants to know if I've ever tested an old Torker intake for a small block Chevy. Yes, I have. And I've also tested them for Fords. And they're in the testing that I've done, a Torker is worse than a Victor Jr. and not nearly as good as an RPM air gap. It's kind of an older design, and I don't think it works as well. Stuart wants to know what a good camshaft choice is for a 6.2 truck motor used for daily driving. I would use a truck cam. I would use probably in a 6.2, I might use a stage 2 truck cam, probably would work well. Kermit wants to know who the first person is that will build a 10,000 RPM, 900 horsepower NA Coyote. I don't know. Take a look at what Ben did over there at EFI University. He's done some pretty impressive stuff. He's done 5-digit RPM stuff. It's pretty impressive. And it wasn't even an overhead cam motor. Justin wants to know, hey, Richard, on your 3.8 Big Bang compound, can you try putting a smaller pulley on the supercharger while maintaining the same boost for the turbo? Justin, I've got bad news for you. The Big Bang 3.8 liter will not be a compound. It will just be a turbo. The supercharger will just be in the way. I am going to do a compound with it. We're going to run, various boost levels and stuff. But the supercharger is just in the way. It just needs an NA intake manifold to make good power. Mike says Ford showed what we could do with their 4-valve engines and are now back to pushrod engines, the 7.3 liter, which is a good motor. It's big. It's kind of nice. Glad you made that point because this is an interesting thing, and it goes back to the conspiracy theory thing because we believe the things that we want to believe. Like we have lots of things that we want to be true, and that's because we link our ego to those. So if we're a Ford guy or a Chevy guy, then we want that to be better, whether it is or not. And the reality is that if you know anything about Coyote motors and you've taken a look at what guys that really apply themselves to Coyote motors, or really any motor, but certainly a Coyote, they make lots of power, especially for their displacement, and they work really well under boost. They do all of the things that you would expect of a 4-valve motor that flows really well, that you can run cam timing in, that you can add boost to. I mean, any motor you can have make a lot of power. Even flathead Fords. Look at the flat fire stuff. Look at what Kazi did with any engine family when he decided to enter Engine Masters with it, with Pontiacs, with a 400M, with anything. If you apply enough time and effort and money into anything, you can get it to work really well. And the other question you have to ask yourself is, why is it important to you that one has to be better than the other? They can all be good and they can all be awesome. That's kind of my point. Do I remember? Grant wants to know if I remember the flying tube conspiracy. I'm not familiar with that. Turned out it was just bugs flying by, and the streak they made when being recorded by VHS. If they were being recorded by VHS, that was a little while ago. Justin says Gale Banks recently did a test on his compound Duramax. Actually made more power when putting a larger pulley on the blower. Yeah, if you spin the blower faster, it will process more air. And if you're force feeding the blower, you make the blower more efficient. So if the blower is limiting the boost, the airflow from the turbo going through the blower, and you spin the blower faster, that stands to reason that more air would get through there. Basically, what you're doing is changing the size of the restrictor hole by making the blower go faster. Josh wants to know if can a D-stroke LS be streetable? Yeah, you can. Although I just never know why you would want to go with a D-stroke version over a standard stroke version unless you are class limited. Unless you just thought it was cool, because that's enough of a reason for me. I do lots of stuff, like I drove a Chevy Sprint Turbo and changed the air-to-air intercooler to an air-to-water intercooler because I thought it was cool. And I also changed the bypass valve because I thought it was cool. And I did lots of stuff just because I thought it was cool. ZE German. So you're getting in on the conspiracy now. Is the new Ford 7.3 basically an LS? See? It's all carryover. Fang wants to know, you ran the stock K24 oil pump to 8,600, but is that healthy for the stock oil pump? Is it worth upgrading to a K20 with no balance shafts? Would this cause the engine to vibrate at high RPM? Not having balance shafts is definitely going to change the harmonics of the motor. That's the problem with when you increase displacement on a 4-cylinder. You get inherent vibration, just like going with a flat plane crank and a V8. You get inherent vibration. It's part of the design. So having the balance shafts help that, but lots of guys running K24 pumps on that. We obviously had logged the oil pressure curve, and we saw a slight drop in oil pressure at the top, but I don't think that's telling us that the oil pump isn't working anymore. I think that that's normal. And maybe you didn't ask the question about the oil pressure, but I'm probably going to switch to a K20 pump when we do the big bang stuff, especially if we're going to be running it at 8,000 RPM with 30 or 40 pounds of boost, whatever it will take. 416X 398 wants to know if I've used T85 or T98 ethanol from Torco. I never have. I've used the E85 race fuel from Rocket Brand, but I think that's about as exotic as I've gotten. Have you ever run a Holley Sniper with boost? Now, see, Rick Bose Rides wants to know if I've ever run a Holley Sniper with boost. When somebody asks about a sniper, they need to be really specific. Holley has applied that sniper name to like 35,000 different products. So everything from fuel injection to intake manifolds and all kinds of stuff. So I have run a race sniper intake manifold. I've run a standard sniper intake manifold. I've run the sniper throttle body, but we haven't done that under boost. And so that you guys know, so you don't have to ever ask the question again, I do not like the 4-hole throttle bodies with the throttle bodies in the replacement for a carburetor. I do not like those. I do not like them under boost. I do not like them NA. I do not like self-learning stuff. And that's just me. You guys maybe could have some good experience with it and stuff, but I don't like running those. We've had a few issues with those on the dyno that I don't think have been fixed. So there you go. The agent wants to know, Richard, you tested the 224, 232, 113, and 231, 239 cam for the Supercharged LS3 combo, in which we stated that the 231 only has 41 thousandths piston to valve clearance. Was that an older cam lobe, or is this still the case? I think it had 41,000. The 231 cam probably had 41 thousandths intake piston to valve clearance, and that probably was on a flat top LS3, I'm guessing. And that seems like it's about right. That seems pretty close, but we've run cams that are closer than that. So I don't know if that helps you. Ricardo Bryce wants to know, is a billet, I don't know if that's LS, or is LS billet main cap or pinned main cap necessary in an LS, or at what point would you use it? I don't know. Since we've run 1,500 horsepower with the stock cap and the stock bolts, we don't even put ARP studs or anything in it. I think pinning the cap is never a bad idea, but it's a lot of work to go through. If you're running 1,000 horsepower LS, I don't think anybody does that. Dave said he remembers Banks' turbo funny car when NHRA banned it. Yeah. They had twin turbo ones and triple turbo ones and all kinds of crazy stuff. Turbos make more power than blowers, so I know that all the top fuel guys will say, "Oh yeah, the blower motors are the most powerful things in the world." Yeah, that's only because they won't let turbos run because of a big blower, and they won't even let them run twin screw blowers in top fuel. They have to run Roots blowers. So, and I'm sure that they're hybrids or whatever, but that's just not an efficient form, especially with the pressure that they're running on those things. It's a lot. Would you use a Holly? Grant wants to know if I'd use a Holly Sniper in a boat with a goat and a fox in a box. I do not like green eggs and ham. GFP Racing, LS heads on a Ford. I will never, ever try that. Even if it lines up close, I just don't ever see any reason to do that unless it's a Gee Whiz thing. And I don't do really Gee Whiz stuff too much on the internet just to get likes or views or whatever. That's not what this is about. I'll try to make the thing more entertaining if I can. But when I'm doing a testing, we do a test, and like here's something I have coming up that I haven't told anybody about, but I'm going to use liquid nitrogen as an intercooler. So I have plans to do that. And although it's not practical, and it's more of a Gee Whiz thing, I think it'll be awesome. Because personally, I would like to see how low we can get the charge temperature. And this comes from the talking that I did with the guys that do the compressed air supercharging. After looking at their charge temperatures, I wanted to find out how low we could get the charge temperatures. Like if we get the charge temperatures below zero, how much power can we make? Because these guys are running full timing, running normal naturally aspirated air fuel ratios with their compressor supercharging and increasing the power gains of the NA motor by 100% at 7 or 8 pounds. So that got me thinking, well, obviously we need to lower the charge temperature on everything. So liquid nitrogen is the way to do it. And I have designed a setup that I think I can use, which will be kind of cool. Stuart wants to know if there's any chance I could do a video tutorial on tuning. I don't any experience on HP tuners, so that you guys all know, so that you never have to ask again. I am not a tuner. I've never used HP tuners. I don't do tuning, so I'm not a tuner. So I don't do remote tuning. I would never tune anybody's vehicle. I would never send them a tune. I don't ever do that. On the other side of that is I can tune my own stuff on the engine dyno as long as I'm using a Holly or a Fast. As long as we can get it running, I can make it then do all the things I want it to do. And that's only because if we use this as my map, I tune idle, and then I tune the transition from idle to the top of the table where all the wide open throttle stuff is. And let's say this is 3,000 RPM. Whoa, off the graph. So all I have to do is tune very little bit of the map. Now I can go in and interpolate it and make the graph all look fancy in case anybody comes in and looks at it so that it looks pretty. But the reality is that that's very easy to tune. And because not that there's any magic to it. Here's all the tuning is, especially if you're doing any kind of standalone management system. I'm sure that HP's is the same way. But if I have a value and I make that value bigger, then I give it more fuel. If I make that value smaller, then I take fuel away. If I have an air fuel meter that tells me it needs more fuel, and I go click, and I just add fuel, and it goes, okay, it has the amount of fuel that it needs. It's not really magic. It's really very simple, at least on the engine dyno it is. Where all the magic happens is the area that I'm not at. It's all in this middle stuff. That's transition and the IAC and all that stuff. Making everything work for transition, gear shifts, and all that stuff. That's much harder, and that's not what I'm good at. There are people that do that for a living, and I'm not that good. We get an opportunity to test the Kazi SR71 heads. Are those the big block Ford heads? Because I think I have tested some Kazi heads, and I don't remember which ones they are. I tested them on a 500+ inch stroker big block Ford, and I think that they did very well. I just don't know if they were the SR71s or not. Okay, James wants to know, any chance of doing a video on a 96 to 2000 GM Vortec 5.7, how to make more power using the factory fuel injection? No, I won't be doing any of the spider fuel injection. I think that's what that one is. I don't like the spider fuel injection, and it's limiting, and it's you have to you can only do that with a factory fuel injection. I just don't think it's a good idea. I would just take that fuel injection off and put a carburetor on it. Then it's a really good motor, or put another kind of port fuel injection on it, and then it works really well. Now, there might be guys out there that are good at it, but like I said, since I'm not a tuner, I can't do that. Megasquirt man here. And Megasquirt is what we're going to use on the 4200, the 4.2 liter inline 6-cylinder Atlas motor. So that should be cool. Lipton wants to know, what do you think about the 4.6 liter Ford? Do you recommend to work on it or not? I happen to be a fan of the 4.6 Ford, and I actually happen to be a bigger fan of the 2-valve 4.6 Ford than the 4-valve motor, only because, again, if you're looking at numbers, there's a bajillion 2-valve motors, and there's a couple hundred 4-valve motors, it seems like, and the 4-valve motors are like infinitely more expensive, although you could find them in Lincolns and stuff, but still, the 2-valve stuff, we made plenty of power with them. I wrote a book on modular Ford stuff. I did umpteen million dyno tests for Muscle Mustangs and Fast Fords. They have all the stuff that works. They've got cams and ported heads and more compression and strokers and all kinds of different intake manifolds and boosts and all kinds of stuff. So they work just like everything else. The thing the one thing I don't like about 4.6 modular Fords is the bore spacing. I wish you could make it bigger. And I know that you can with a 5.4, but I want to have bigger bores in those things. I wish that they did something to the bore spacing so that we could make those things bigger. Mondi wants to know, power gains on low oil pressure on your race engines. We run 45 to 50 PSI on circuit engines. Why do you guys insist on high oil pressure? Well, if you look at the Cup guys, they run as little oil pressure as possible because they know that pressure is resistance, and they're trying to get power everywhere that they can. But for us, it's just like, boost and everything else. More is better. So people think that more oil pressure actually makes the motor safer, when the reality is that's not the case. You just need to have enough. And the reason that, for instance, an LS motor has such high oil pressure is because it has really, really tight bearing clearances. Once you free those up, you can reduce the amount of oil pressure that it has. And I don't think that that's detrimental. I think you only need enough. But then the thing is, they spend a lot of time finding out exactly what enough is. Magna Motors, yes. RXS 20. I do want to get a Magna motor. That's on the list. This is all just time. And I see lots of those, so we know that there's plenty of those in the wrecking yards. Patrick wants to know, I'm building a 351. Edelbrock heads, looking for a good streetable cam, automatic trans. Go with a 274, and you want 400 horsepower. Yeah, 274 is probably going to be what it's required to make 400 horsepower. You might go with a little smaller cam on an automatic. It probably will work. Briggs engines work with no oil pressure. So did Eric. That's a good point. So do Honda motors. I'll tell you a story about a buddy of mine, Harold, Crazy Harold, had a Honda, and we were getting ready to swap a motor out because we bought a junkyard motor for it. And this is way back in the day. This is back in the 80s. So the motor was smoking so bad. It got so bad that we would be sitting in the car at a stoplight, and smoke would just be billowing out of this thing. And people were looking over, thought the car was on fire. I mean, it was terrible. So it needed a new motor. But we were going to put a new motor in it, so we decided to kill the existing motor. It was still running, but not great. So what we did was put it in the bay at the Chevron station that he worked at. And he literally bricked the throttle and started the thing up, and we just walked away from it. And it ran and until the motor seized up. And we thought, okay, good. It just died, and it died unceremoniously. And then we waited a little bit, and it started back up. And so we had to do that 4 times before the motor finally melted itself together, because he had taken all the oil out of it. And we thought, well, let's just see what it does. But it took a long time for the thing to actually break. John wants to know what we're sipping on. Well, it's obviously water because I'm hydrating. But if it wasn't water, it would be some kind of raspberry lemon drop, which, as we know, everyone knows this on the internet. If you don't, you should go out and spread this, that the raspberry lemon drop is the manliest of all the lemon drop family. See, Mike likes the GM Atlas. You can't wait for the 4.2 build. He's doing an LRR 3.7, which is the inline 5-cylinder, which is cool because I've run one of those with a Powerdyne supercharger. I didn't run it. Actually, my friend James Bakke did back in the day, and he put a blower on it. It worked good. And I thought, that's the coolest thing in the world. It's a 5-cylinder engine. It makes me want an Audi Quattro. I see Lisa's here. I think Lisa was actually responsible for me losing my internet connection. But hey, that's time well spent. Oh, I got to raise my pinky up when I drink that? Okay, here we go. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Lisa, do you have any questions about camshafts or turbos or anything? Or boost? See? Somebody loves me. You're the fourth girl tonight to tell me that you love me. Okay, Ryan wants to know, you've tested the Super Cobra Jet heads and the P51s, both Kazi designed. Yes, different evolutions of the Kazi design. The SR71's an evolution of the P51. Okay, it's the baddest conventional big block Chevy head. Does the P51 make more power than like an Airflow Research big block Ford head? I've run the Airflow Research stuff, and it makes good power. I've also run the TrickFlow A460 head, a CNC ported version, and that made a ton of power. I think we made 920 or something with a 557 on one of those, an NA one. Where's my other drink, Lisa? It's right here. I'm just making sure that it's okay. No, I'm not going to make the shelves level. I like them like that. It drives Lisa nuts. Okay, Mr. 532. See, that's a good handle. He wants to know, what turbos would you recommend for a 532 big block Ford? Okay, Mr. And this goes for everybody. When you're asking a question about what turbos to use, let me know what power output you want. A 532 could take a really big single, or obviously big twins as well. 2 S475s will get you 2,000 horsepower. On a 532, you make sure that you have a fairly good size hot side on the S475s, but most guys don't want more than 2,000 horsepower. I mean, because that's a ton. Turbo Mike wants to know, will you ever finish? This is ironic. Turbo Mike wants to know if I'll finish the M90 supercharger on the LS with the smallest pulley. Mike, I do have I think I've got a 3-inch pulley that I got for that with a hub, so I can change the pulleys at will. And I do want to try that again. But I also have an M112. I think it's an M112. Does anybody know what supercharger came on the 0304 Cobra stuff? Is it a 112 or a 122? I do have one of those, and I'm going to make an adapter plate to go on there and run that blower. And what I want to do is I want to do that same thing I'm going to do with the 3800 is I'm going to do a compound deal. I got a really big turbo from Viren at VS, and I'm going to run it on the 4.8 with the high ram, which shouldn't be on a 4.8, and a big cam, which shouldn't be on a 4.8, and then the big turbo, which shouldn't be on a 4.8. And then all that will be wrong, and then we'll cure that all by putting a blower on it. That's how we'll get boost response on it. I know Ryan from Australia wants to see some Barra tests. Well, I want to see a King Brown. So can you go out and catch one of those? Because those are like super cool. Barton, I don't know. Dart is only making their iron heads for the 8.1. I do want to do some 8.1 testing. Raylar are the only guys that I know that make heads for them that are performance heads, and they're aluminum. Michael Julio Iglesias has a 5.3, wants to know twin turbo 800 to 1,000 horsepower, what turbos? 2 GT35s probably would work, something like that, if you're going to do twins. Those are cheap. 2 GT45s would work too and give you plenty of room for growth. But 2 GT35s probably would take you to 1,000 horsepower. See, all right, Julius, he could find a King Brown. He's a farmer in Queensland. Well, be careful because I know that they're big and they're kind of bitey and they're very venomous. All we get to catch here are the only thing I catch here are rattlesnakes, because that's really the only venomous snake we have around here, and they're easy to find because they have big rattles on them. So you know that the only venomous snake around. Down in Southern California, they may have coral snakes. I don't think that they do. I think those are going to be more in Arizona and New Mexico, but they would be really hard to find. I would love to find one of those, but I catch probably 100 snakes a year, and all the venomous ones are going to be rattlesnakes. We do catch a lot of rattlesnakes, but we're always usually looking for king snakes because that's like the ultimate thing. Although I would like to catch a mountain king snake, which are the red ones, and I've never even seen one, which would be very cool. Grant wants to know, how about a 671 on top of a Holly high ram? Yeah. Guys, Grant and to everybody else, guys have actually brought that kind of thing in, usually on a big block, and it's usually on a boat motor, so that what they have is a tunnel ram. They're usually like a Wyand tunnel ram, and then an inner chiller or an intercooler like brick section that's just a couple of inches, and then the blower on top of that. So it's blown, intercooled, and tunnel ram, because you got to check off all the boxes. And it's about 9 feet tall. It's hard to even put on the dyno because it's hard to get the sling and everything working to actually. It's just ridiculously tall. Ooh, an Aussie scrub python. That would be cool. What other kinds of pythons do they have down in Australia? Do they have like ball pythons, or they don't have reticulated pythons, but do they have carpet pythons or something? Let me know. That would be cool. I would love to catch something big like that. I'd actually like to go back east and catch some eastern diamondbacks, which are fairly good size. ZE German, are electric fans worth the horsepower gain on an LQ4 swap? I like running electric fans. I did an electric fan upgrade on my Dodge Tradesman van because every time we ran the motor, it had a coupled fan, and it sounded like a plane taking off every time you'd accelerate. So we put the electric fan on, and it worked really good. And it felt like it had about 500 more horsepower. Crankin' wagon, see, and that's German, which is awesome. How about some VR6 turbo stuff? That would be cool. I don't have any VW stuff. I have done a lot of 1.8 turbo stuff back with my buddy Jason. Shout out to Jason out there, Chop Saw. He had a 1.8T, which is where the pinging is power, the famous phrase "pinging is power" comes from. And I know that I should have trademarked that because other people have used it, and I've actually had them tell me, and I had to tell them where it originated from, because this goes way back. But somebody actually told me, we were talking to them about the programming on their chips for these turbo 1.8 turbo Volkswagen motors. This was in a Golf, and I told them, I said, we're going to run it on the dyno, and I'm going to test it. And I said, can we run these on pump gas? Oh, yeah, no problem. It's all fine. And so we ran the first one, and it worked okay. And I thought I heard a little bit of detonation kind of at the top. And then we ran, and then it had 3 stages. And then we ran the second stage, and it just rattled itself to death. And I took it back, and I said, this thing is we even put a little bit of octane booster in this thing. We had 91 in it. We put octane booster in it. I said, and it was still pinging in stage 2. We didn't even go to stage 3 yet. He goes, well, pinging is power. so my buddy Jason and I looked at each other. We're like, oh my God, that's like maybe the greatest thing in the world. So now I definitely want to make shirts that say pinging is power. Alex wants to know my thoughts on reverse split cams. I don't like them, and I don't use them. So, and it's, maybe that's just dumb of me. Maybe Billy Godbold is going to tell me what an idiot I am, but I've never seen a reverse split cam that I've run make more power NA. So that tends to tell me that it's not going to do what we want once we run turbo stuff. But again, maybe Gale Banks has some magic reverse split cams that he uses, and maybe they work. Although what normally happens is a guy will try that with a turbo and it will work, and then they'll go, yeah, look how great this thing works. Well, yeah, that's great, but you didn't try it. You didn't compare it to anything else. You can compare it to doing a split the other way, or a straight pattern cam or anything. And that's usually what happens, is guys don't have anything to compare it to. UPS Mech Johnson, 363 versus 383 LS 5.3 is one better for durability. Well, what I can tell you is I would just run a 5.3. If you're going to run a turbo, I would just run a turbo 5.3 and not worry about changing the bore or the stroke. Unless you have to bore it out because it has rust or something in it, then just bore whatever it needs to be and then add boost to it. And the turbo is going to determine the power. I wouldn't spend the money on boring and stroking unless you had to. Michael Brown, he's building an LQ4 6-liter, putting LS3 heads on it, putting it in an El Camino. All of that's cool. I want to go twin turbo, but I don't want to have a laggy setup. 800 to 1,000 horsepower. Well, a 6-liter with LS3 heads will be fine. Put a long runner intake on it. Put a stage 1 or 2 NA cam on it, not a turbo cam. And then put 2 GT35 size turbos, and that should work fine. Old Barn Shop. Nice. I like that. L99 4.3 with F-body aluminum heads. Yeah, they will work. They fit on there. We've already positioned the LT1 heads on there, and they work just fine. I'm going to be running a ported set on here pretty soon. And the most awesome thing in the world, a tune port, an L98 tune port manifold, which is super cool. $419X 398. What does my handle mean? A 413, I'm hoping, is a Mopar reference. By 413 by 398. So is that a dimension of something? You gotta let me know. Now I'm curious. Not so curious that I won't, hydrate. I feel hydrated already. Is the stock LS pump good for 7,000 RPM? Yes. No, not without a problem. Oh, that's a good question. Staying 09er. Thoughts on a 4-pattern cam? We've tested them on the dyno, and they're primarily marketing. Because here's the problem. They were trying to do it, for you guys that don't know, a 4-pattern cam is they're trying to tailor the cam to the difference in ostensibly in a single plane intake manifold. So you got 4 longs and 4 shorts. And so they're trying to pair the camshaft with the different runner lengths. The problem is pairing the camshaft with the different runner lengths doesn't change the runner length. And it doesn't cure the difference. It doesn't cure the problem that's inherent with the intake manifold, which you cannot cure with the cam. We know because we tried doing that with rocker ratio and all kinds of stuff. And what you need to do is make an intake manifold like a Hiram or something that has the same runner length. And then all of a sudden, everything is okay. Oh, Julius, 413 by 398. Okay, cool. Tom Selleck, a K24 swap in your 99 or 90 or 1988 Toyota Celica All-Track, dude. A Celica All-Track, respect, man. That's like OG stuff. That's like the ultra super expensive version of like a Mitsubishi Eclipse. Okay, I got about 7 minutes left. KC wants to know, is there any major price or performance advantages? An LS7 performance is easy to get to if you have boost, but with an NA 5.3, you won't get to LS7 performance. What else do we got here? Oh, Kunal, Mark Sanchez is working on my Bronco 351. My question is, what's the best heads for that? It's still California legal. I'm not up on what all the California legal heads are. The last time I looked at any of the legal stuff, I know TrickFlow had some stuff. I think Edelbrock has some stuff. I don't know if the Airflow Research stuff are, but Mark is really sharp on the Ford stuff, so he's the right guy to take care of you. Mark would be the guy that I would go to for these kind of esoteric Ford questions. He's the guy. Tyler wants to know who are some engine builders I look up to. Well, I even after I did Engine Masters, which I was a finalist in Engine Masters, and I had a lot of fun. I had to spend a lot of time to get there. But guys like Kazi and Bishop and those guys are engine builders. I consider myself more of an engine assembler, and that's a different thing. That's a whole different level. I wouldn't build a race motor for somebody because I'm not an engine builder. I've done 20 years worth of testing, and I kind of know what works. But those guys do what they do on a different level. So there's lots of good guys. I like Kazi because he's cool. And the guy that I really liked more than anybody was John Lingenfelter. And because he was such a cool guy. It didn't even matter what his ability was, but he was just a cool guy. He was a guy that I wanted to like sit down and hang out with. And I got to, which was awesome before he passed away. Okay, it's Anthony wants to know, what would be more powerful, a built 5.3 or a stock one with 10 pounds? Well, I have videos up, and a stock 5.3 with 10 pounds will be about 600 horsepower. So it would be really hard to do a built 5.3 that makes that much power. Most of them that I've done with heads, cam, and intake and stuff are more like 500 horsepower. So it's just with boost, it's really, really easy. And you wouldn't ever do a stock one with 10 pounds. You would put some kind of cam in. Even if you just put another stock kind of cam in, an LS6 or an LS2 or an LS3 or an LS9 or anything else, and then all of a sudden you'd pick up another 100 horsepower at the same boost level. Tom wants to know if I've had any experience with an H22. Yeah, well, don't talk to me about rod length. Rod length, in my opinion, doesn't change anything. You're going to get your power from what I call the big three, and the big three are heads, cam, and intake manifold, and then the other things, compression and headers and things like that. But we've run a bunch of H22 stuff back when I was hanging out with Oscar Jackson Racing. They put blowers on them, and I've seen guys do turbos on them and all kinds of stuff. And we always thought of it kind of as the big block because I always had a Civic, so that was always the small block version. So the H22 was the big motor. America wants to know, he's a little late to the party, but what about a Ford FE390? I would like to do an FE390. I've kind of been looking when I go to the wrecking yard and haven't come across one that I thought was a viable candidate. I think what I'm going to do now when I go to wrecking yards is I'll try to just grab stuff that I think I'll be using later on, even if I'm not going to use it right now, but so I have it. And an FE would be high on the list just because I've never built one. Same thing with an AMC motor, although I don't see a lot of those in the wrecking yards either. I'd like to do a 401, but the 360 or something would be just fine. ProCharge Mopar, so you're saying just run an S480 on my 400 big block Mopar? Yeah, I don't think you need to do a crank swap. I don't. The problem with people that have not been doing the turbo stuff and they've been doing NA stuff is they start thinking down the NA lines. Okay, I want to add compression and displacement and all those things. You don't need any of that with a turbo. If you have a 1,000 horsepower turbo, you're going to make 1,000 horsepower. You're going to do that if the motor's a 400 or a 383 or a 440 or a 520. The turbo is going to be determine the power. All that the displacement is going to do is help you spool that turbo up, and you already have enough displacement and power output to do that. So just put the 480 on it, and you'll make more power than you probably can possibly use. America's got a 390 to donate, dude. Is that an FE? It better be like a, I kind of want a 427 side oiler. If you have that, that would be really cool. Mika Davis, hey Richard, can you do a big bang on an OM606? I don't even know what that is. I feel like I failed everybody because I'm not even sure what that. I think I need to learn something cool here. What exactly is an OM606? Graham H, now you're talking my language here. I want to build a street race setup for a Datsun 280Z. I have a stock 5.3. I'm looking for 500 to 700 horsepower. Should I go with a high compression NA or build a 700 horse turbo? You should always do a turbo, but actually on a Z, 500 horsepower in a 280Z would be really, really fun and sporty. So you could easily do that. And then you don't have to go crazy with the rear end. You can do an R200 or something in the 280 and it would work out just fine. I think you would love it. And then if you have the need for more power, you could always put a blower on it. An OMC 606 diesel 24 valve. Yeah, that's not going to happen. No diesel stuff. I'm not a diesel guy. I like them and I understand them, but I haven't done really any testing with them. Peter wants to know, should you dual key the crank on a small block 400 with a 671 and 12 pounds of boost? It's not the boost so much as the power output. So it's the flow rate of the blower that's doing the work. And that's going to kind of determine how much load you have on it and whether and it's the accel and decel thing that are really kind of problematic also. I like putting 2 keys in it. And even if you don't put 2 keys in it, do 1 key and then pin the other side. These pin setups are really easy to do, and you just use a roll pin or something, and it's really easy to do. That way you don't have to take the crank out and have a crank keyed to do it. So it's really easy. Jake Black wants to know, has got a Mopar question. The bigger stock big block lifters for 650 horsepower or get it bushed? I'm actually not a Mopar guy, so I wish I could answer you, but I honestly don't know. Tom, on your Celica, on your All-Track, do you still have the original motor? That's kind of what I want to know. John James, no Gen 5 because all I want to do is run boost on it. I've already run nitrous on it. I've run headers on it. We tried a camshaft upgrade with it and failed miserably on that particular camshaft. All we did was pick up a little bit of power at the top and lost power everywhere else. It was not a good choice. I want to do more 5.3 stuff because I think that's more common. And I do want to do boost on it. I want to do a Super Richie junkyard turbo on it. And I just need to get enough fuel to it. Apprentice Felix wants to know if I know Gail Banks. Yes, I do know Gail. He's a really good guy. They've reached out to me before about doing stuff with them, and I've been a big fan of his from way back. And he's obviously seen the turbo stuff that I've done, because I'm kind of a big deal. So of course he recognizes me. Yeah, they're on a whole nother level of stuff. L86 and boost, yeah, but L83 and boost is just as good as an L86. I can't imagine they made anywhere near as many L86 motors as they made L83s. Because if I go to the wrecking yard and look for a 5.3, I can only find 10 of them. And if I look for a 6-liter, you can't find any. I got to imagine that the L86 and the L83 are kind of going to be the same way. Oh, the best cam for your 13B. That's a really tough question. I'm going to have to think about that one for a while. But Tony, if you were any kind of rotary guy, you would have a 3-rotor at least. Aaron wants to know when I'm going to write a book on junkyard turbo engines. I'm not writing any more books. Those are a lot of work for less than no money. Tyler wants to know what my first car was. My first car was a 1970 split bumper, 70 and a half, split bumper Rally Sport Camaro with a base 2-barrel engine in it. And a turbo 350 trans and a 308 gear. And it was lime green with a white top, which I then changed to red with a black top. And I put conies on it and WS6 Trans Am sway bars and big block springs cut in the front and Z28 springs in the back and yada, yada, yada. It was all really cool, except it had stock brakes on it, which was not great. John James, 70 and a half. Yeah, represent 70 and a half Rally Sport. Although I wish it was a Z28. Actually, I would really like to get one of those. And I've been looking for one of those. We've been looking for a Chevelle or Camaro or just something cool that's already done, something that I don't have to build, something that's not sitting out rusting itself to death like the Nova. Tom wants to know if you had to do 1,500 horsepower with a Gen 3 Hemi on a budget. I'm not sure those things go together. I don't think I would do a stroker version of 392 or a 426. I think I would use stock heads. The stock 5.3 or the 392 heads work really well and they make a lot of power. And then you're obviously gonna have to turbocharge it. I think just getting the thing to stay together at that power level would be the thing. It's easy to make 1,500 horsepower because you can make 600 horsepower with a Hemi without any problem at all. I mean, it takes nothing. You could do that out of a 5.7. So if you had a 6.4, you can make even more. Then you just have to get everything sealed up to make 1,500 horsepower. Yes, I'm Crankin' Wag wants to know about the 4,200. Yes, we're gonna do the 4,200, and I'm gonna do boost on it. And so let me know what you guys think. Do you guys BMW stuff? I do like BMW stuff. I've done chassis dyno stuff on BMWs, and I would love to have one. I'd actually like to have an old 535, the OG one, and I'd like to have not a BMW motor. I'd like to have an LS motor in it, obviously. But I really like those cars because I think that they do great. But the 4,200. Is the 4,200 the new 2JZ? I don't think it's there yet, but I think that it has enough power potential to make really good power. I don't know that it has the strength that a 2JZ does, but it doesn't have to. There's only needs to be one 2JZ. The 4,200 can be its own thing. And yes, I have an RB25. Ray wants to know if I have an RB25. I do. I have one, and we have not got it running yet. Here for Dan's first car, a $50 1972 Pinto. Awesome, with a V8 swap. Cadillac Northstar. I know, Dustin. Everyone's wanting a Cadillac Northstar. I guess I maybe I should go get a Cadillac Northstar and just do a big bang on it and not do anything else to it. Just put it on there, run it, make sure that it's okay, and then just started running like about 1,000,000 pounds of boost. I'm not going to do cams or ported heads or anything dumb. Just start running boost on it. Maybe that would be kind of a fun thing. I've always thought about that when I was walking through the wrecking yard. There's so many engines that I see, like the 2.8 liter, the crappy 2.8 liter V6 Chevys that they had in Berettas and all kinds of stuff. I think I should just get motors from the wrecking yard and then just run 1,000,000 pounds of boost on them and see what happens. Aiden, you're running an RB25 and now you have a 6-liter 2 days ago. Well, what about the RB25? Yo, what's up with that thing? Do you have a trans for that too? Any chance of doing big power on a Godzilla motor? I think a Godzilla motor is just out of my price range. It's a 7.3. It's a big motor. It makes good power, and you add boost to it. And when you add boost to a motor that's already making good power, it makes even better power. That's what they do. And there's a lot of good guys out there doing that stuff. I don't know why Ford wouldn't say, "Hey, Richard, why don't you do this?" I mean, I have written books for them, and I'm sure I've done more Ford testing out there than anybody. But it is what it is. Yes, there's lots of Ford 3.8s and 4.2s in the wrecking yard, I'm sure. I thought all early Camaros were Z28s. I think if you look at them now, I think that they are all Z28s. And if I had one, I would make mine look like a Z28. Mine was all lowered and stuff. It was, everyone else was jacking their cars up with my car when I originally bought it, had air shocks on it. And it had a Van Halen cassette. Running with a Devil was cranked up as loud as it could go, as loud as my 6 or 7 watt stereo would actually go. But it had air shocks on, and I eventually took those off. But everybody else was jacking their cars up and drag racing. I mean, I was more into like back in the back roads up to the lake and stuff, doing the road racing stuff. Okay, 2 minutes. 97 Jaguar with a 4-liter inline 6. Would that be great for a turbo? Yes, everything is great for a turbo. Come on, you're a Jaguar guy. Actually, every motor needs boost, especially a quad 4. White Snake, yeah. Biggest cam for a street-driven 4.8. I would go with a stage 1 truck cam. Yes, that's right. You heard me right. Grant wants to know what it would take to get a 383 conventional small block to make 500 horsepower NA. We've done that a lot. It just takes good cylinder heads. If you have airflow research cylinder heads and then a decent camshaft, you can get a 383 to do that. When are we going to see the 4200? Well, since I don't even have one yet, it's probably going to be a little while. And I have other engines that are stacked up waiting for me to test them. All right, guys, I got to get going. This is empty, and I'm sure Lisa's is empty. I got to make sure she's all taken care of. Thanks for showing up. And I've got some more stuff we're coming up next time. Make sure to go take a look at the video that I just posted on the 6.2 liter stuff. Thanks for showing up, guys. We will see you tomorrow night. I thought I ended stream, yo. Come on, and yo, what's up?